Good morning, everyone. I am Marius Nazare.
I'm Chris Mulry.
And this is vlog number 6 of the London Property Podcast. We've got new microphones, so the audio quality is going to be much better. Right, we are going to start off, as usual, with news of the week. Last week, we obviously had the campaign manifestos out, and the Conservatives have, it was a bit of a shock, right, this news of the week. So they actually pledged, as part of their campaign, that they will be increasing, they'll add a 3% surcharge on the stamp duty tax for overseas buyers. So that is on top of everything else, right? So at a higher rate, you're looking at 12% stamp duty, right? And then if you have a second property, that's an extra 3%. Now, if you're an overseas buyers and you've already ticked the boxes before, you're looking at another 3% on top of the 15, which works out to be a whopping 18% stamp duty tax. So that's what obviously they've pledged. Now, it was very vague, and that's why it's a very interesting thing that they brought out, because there were talks previously of them actually lowering stamp duty. But yeah, this is, I think, something to kind of, they threw out something in the election manifesto to kind of par with Labour's kind of policies, you know. We don't know if it's going to be coming into effect or when it will be, if they do actually follow through with it. But yeah, overseas buyers are obviously going to be affected. So there we go. They estimate that per year 70,000 transactions are going to be affected by this. So there we go. What do you think, Chris, would be the impact of such of an increase, another surcharge on top of whatever we have already?
Well, you know, for UK wide, it's not going to affect anything a huge deal, but in terms of London, it will affect it a lot more. Particularly if you look at the research for where the foreign buyers are actually buying in London, I should really say overseas buyers, or mainly around Westminster, Kensington, Chelsea, something like 15%. Westminster is something like 25%. We work in Westminster, so our area is disproportionately affected. But yeah, it is going to be more challenging for overseas investors. But one thing that I can't help but think, this is an election pledge.
Yeah.
It's something to kind of, you know, claw back some voters, and I don't doubt that it's going to come into play. But I think it sounds a lot worse than what it actually is, because we have heard Boris Johnson previously in the past talk about wanting to bring down the top rate of stamp duty from 12% down to 7%. So my theory is, and it's a bit of a conspiracy theory, he's saying we're going to put a tax on kind of foreign investors, which he may well do, but you know, at some point in the future, I do believe, from what I've been listening to, that higher rate, 12%, will come down. Now, maybe I'm an optimist. We work in the property sector. It doesn't make any sense for it to be a top rate of 12%. Overseas buyers are probably going to be second homeowners anyway, so they hit with another 3, and then another 3 on top of that for being overseas. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18% is a lot of money. You probably, you know, would you even want to buy a property paying 18% of the capital value in tax straight off the bat? You know, you could rent for several years. So something doesn't kind of stand quite right. I don't think the Conservative government want to completely cripple the London housing market. It's
Absolutely
already
not.
in the doldrums. So, yeah.
Interesting nonetheless. So we will see how this develops. So I guess that's our news of the week, because it's highly relevant. Some weeks are harder than others to find news that are directly impacting the London property market. This week we've got something nice, and you know, we can talk about this for forever really, but that's, like Chris said, just an election pledge. It's very fluffy and very vague at this stage, which I kind of agree with you. Whether it will happen or not, I might think it's just an election thing, and they might work on the higher tax, stamp duty tax figure, and lower that, so it'll kind of balance it out. So we'll see.
So it looks good.
Yeah.
It looks good that we're going to hit voters. Foreign buyers, but at the same time, if they do bring the top rate down,
it's kind of exactly. So I think they'll be smart about it, and Boris Johnson knows about the London property market, so I'm sure he was the mayor, so he knows how things work here in London. Right, going on to.
Do you want to do about Section 21?
I think you can.
Because there's some. It's not new news, but for those of you who might not have heard about it, Section 21. It seems to be whoever kind of wins this next election, all of them are singing off the same hymn sheet in that they're going to be abolishing Section 21s. So Section 21 notice is a notice that you can serve to evict a tenant out of a property. You don't need any reasons for it. You just serve the notice, and then they've got 2 months to leave the property. And the problem with Section 21s for tenants, say if you're a family living in an area where your kids are going to a school, a landlord can all of a sudden, out of the blue, just say, right, you're leaving, you've got 2 months to go, and you've got to pull your kids out of school or rush to find another place. So the government does feel that it's right to, and any other party coming in feels it's right to give a bit more security to the tenants, which in effect I think it is the right thing to do in a way. But what landlords have been concerned about is, how do they actually, if they really do need to get a property back, how are they going to get it back? And it looks like there might be some caveats that are put in place that if you want to move into it yourself, or if you want to sell it, the process of evicting the tenant, they're looking into ways, and they've had consultations on how to make the process of getting the tenants out under those ways a little bit easier than what they are at the moment. Because at the moment, if you go through a Section 8 to get a tenant out, they can be challenged, you can end up in court, it can go on for months and months, and you can end up with some serious financial loss. So abolishing Section 21 on the outset, a lot of landlords will be thinking, gosh, if this disappears, there's my safety net gone if I end up in a situation that I really need to get the property back. Is there any point being a private landlord anymore, particularly if you've had an experience that you've gone through the court system, completely not your fault, and you're just trying to get your property back? Maybe you've had an issue with a tenant. So it's a very contentious subject. And also the Landlord Association, National Landlord Association, has done some research, and they think that rent prices are going to go up. Landlords are going to be a lot more choosy on which tenants to rent the property to, and also for those on universal credit, and this is the big kicker: universal credit tenants, when their landlord serves them a Section 8 or a Section 21 or whatever, the council advises them to stay in the property from what this is my understanding of it. They normally advise them to stay in the property until court proceedings. Now, if Section 21 is then pulled, landlords are going to be forced into the court process route and having to fight in court. Therefore, the National Landlord Association have said that housing benefit tenants are going to find it very difficult to get housing from the private landlord sector, because most private landlords are just not going to let their property. So it could have an adverse effect. So the court system will need to be reformed to some degree.
Excellent. So we have covered the news. We have covered Section 21. We are going to go on to Sale of the Week. This week is nothing like Albert Hall Mansions that we did 2 weeks ago. It's a small one-bedroom flat in a development quite close to us called The Water Gardens. It's a gated development, secure, and it seems to be quite, the favorite of a lot of clients from the Middle East. A few politicians in there as well. So, I guess the fact that it's a secure gated development is really, desirable for these people. And the flat that we sold is just a very kind of it's a lovely flat actually, 1-bedroom flat, fully refurbished to the highest standard. Both living room and bedroom are the right proportions, and yeah, it has a long lease. Sold it just under the asking price after 2-3 weeks of negotiation between the buyers and the seller. But we obviously, it's a great property, and I actually did say to the client, the sellers, when I first walked in, well, in my head, when I first walked into that property, I said, I need to sell this property. It's a great flat. The seller's really motivated to move on and sell the property. So I said, okay, this is a great property. It needs to be sold ASAP. I'm going to do it. Obviously, a few weeks went by, we had a few viewings, and hopefully now we're in a position that it will get wrapped up. And I did say to the seller when I met with her a week and a half ago, and I did say, I walked into your flat, I'm going to sell it. So hopefully this will get over the line eventually. It's a good flat. I think it's hard to find a flat at that level in terms of refurbishment and the how modern it is, with a long lease in a gated development in central London, for that price, right? So asking price was 600k. We can't disclose what the actual offer was, but it was just under that, and you can have a look online. There's nothing really on that level, so that's our sale of the week.
That moves on to new listing of the week.
Yeah.
And that's a house that we've got in Trevor Place, not quite on the market yet. The family are just organising some affairs, but it's a house in Knightsbridge. They've owned it for 30 odd years. It's a big house. It's 2,350 square feet, and it's arranged as a 5-bed.
Yeah.
So needs some work. Same family have lived in it for a long time. I think it's pretty much the last British family on the street. Talking about foreign buyers.
Yeah.
It's very close to Harrods.
They love Knightsbridge.
Yeah. foreign buyers love staying around Harrods and going on their shopping sprees. But it's a lovely house. You don't really see them very often around there. I mean, I think they've even still got the bathrooms carpeted.
Really old school.
With carpet up the side of the baths. It's a good house. You could potentially extend it a little bit. You could potentially extend into the loft. So yeah, it's a good listing. As soon as we get the details, we can put a link.
Yeah.
And in terms of pounds per square foot, it should be coming on somewhere in the region of about £1,800 per square foot. And we've had a look on Trevor Square, which is the street just next door. There's a house on there which is fully developed and refurbished for about £2,500 a square foot. So there's a big arbitrage for somebody who wants something to get in there, renovate it, make it their own, right next to Knightsbridge, who likes Harrods. Then this could be the house for you.
Yeah, great project. So we're excited to have that coming on board. All right, on to the final question, a question section. Funny enough, it is your question answered. This week we have Lily from Yorkshire, and the question was, what makes a good investment? Now, obviously, we're just going to touch on the 3 kind of core things that we see as important to really judge and gauge whether something is a good investment or not in property. First of all, you've got location, right? That old saying, location, 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 but it's very true. Are you close to transport links? If you're in London, underground, definitely Crossrail. I mean, there's been so much research suggesting that anything that's within a 10 minutes, 15 minutes radius of a Crossrail station, in the last 5 years or so, the prices have increased dramatically. So it just shows how important having key transportation hubs and connectivity to where you're buying the property. It will really affect what rental you can achieve, because ultimately, a good investment is about getting good rental returns. So transportation will attract good tenants, better tenants. If you've got a link, let's say, with Canary Wharf or the city, then obviously you'll be targeting a different kind of tenant than if you're living somewhere else, right? So location is key. In terms of locations, obviously, what other things are around? I mean, people now want to live in a place, even if it is for rental, where they have things to do. They can go to their local cafe or their bakery on a Saturday, Sunday to get that fresh bread or have a fresh coffee. So what is important, what's really key is to have all these things for people: shopping, not just transportation, but things to do, entertainment, leisure facilities. So that's also very important, because again, you're going to keep the tenants happy, you're going to attract better tenants, and ultimately you're going to have the tenants staying in for much longer than a year. So location is really key. Schools and hospitals, again, if you've got a house and you're targeting families, what schools are around? Again, I think that's number one criteria for a family that's renting, really. What school is close by? So location is a key thing. Yield is the second thing that we kind of identified in order to judge an investment, whether it's good or not. So yield will be affected by the purchase price in many ways, right? And then the rental income, right? So securing a property when you do go to buy a buy-to-let investment or a property for investment, the purchase price is actually going to affect your yield, right? And then obviously the rental income that you get from the property is also going to increase or decrease your yield. So that is key. And then something that a lot of people don't really factor in is the costs. So management, maintenance, and if it is a leasehold property, if it is an apartment, service charges and ground rents. That is also something that will eat up your yield. So again, picking a buy-to-let property, look at the service charges, because it could be a great development, with all these things. And then if it's a high service charge, your yield is going to go down. And I think Chris is going to mention some other elements which you should also look at when you're considering what makes a good investment.
Yeah. So a developer who I know is quite interesting, because it's probably one of the most successful developers that I've ever met, and he turns over a lot of properties. And I did ask him, what's the one main thing that you look for when you kind of buy an investment flat? And contrary to everything else that you would imagine, he turned around and said, I just buy things that I like.
Yeah, sounds so vague, but
so yeah, I'm talking about the intangibles of an investment. Yeah. So I'll try and give you a few examples. It might be, normally he buys period properties, and the period properties that he buys, he wants something that's got some redeeming feature that he can bring out and add value to. So it might be, in these Victorian buildings that we have around here, it might be a first floor flat that's got lowered ceilings on the first floor. First floor flats normally in Victorian buildings normally have really high ceilings. Some of them have been lowered, like maybe by the council for heat insulation. You might think, well, I can take these ceiling heights up a lot. I can increase the volume of the room. It's got a chimney breast over there that doesn't have a fireplace in there anymore. He might put a marble Carrara fireplace in there with a big mirror above, bookshelves either side, colour tones. Bring out all the period features, put wood floors in if it's got carpets. Just something that you think you can visualize the room and you can see how you're going to bring the period features and add value in that direction. So, some buyers, some investors, novice investors will look at a flat and think, okay, well, it's a good location, which is fine. the price per square foot is cheap. It seems like a cheap flat, but don't just buy a cheap flat, because a cheap flat might always be a cheap flat. If you can't, it might be cheap for a reason. Maybe it's a basement on a busy main road that's got a high service charge and it's cheap, right? You buy it, it's always going to be a basement on a busy main road with a high service charge. You're probably not going to be able to affect any of those things. You can make it look good inside, but you've still got these problems with it. So you need to find a property which is all around the problems you can address and you can manage and you can improve and make them better. But ultimately, buy something that you like, because selling a property is a psychological game. If you like it, if you like a property, right? I'm probably going to like it as well, right?
And a lot of other people will like it.
Exactly. So those are like intangibles about buying an investment property. So don't completely discount them, because I think they're quite important.
No, I agree, because a lot of people, when they look for a buy-to-let investment, they're really numbers driven. And that's perfectly fine. The numbers obviously have to stack up, but if you want to go that level above in terms of being a really top, investor in the property industry, especially in London, where we've got incredible properties. I mean, yes, somewhere, not that there's anything wrong with properties up north, but the matter of fact is there's a lot of great period properties, a lot of unique properties full of character in London compared to other cities, because it's a much bigger city. So we've got a lot more unique properties, and the intangibles are so important, natural light, and like Chris mentioned. And if you do want to go above to that really top level, the best developers that we know and the ones that we work with, they really pay attention to these details, and the numbers have to stack up, but there's a lot of other intangibles that are super important. These things for us, we make a good investment. So it's kind of, you can use it as a checklist, or by all means, there are probably other few things, bits and bobs, but these are the key 3 things that we think you should look at something, look at the numbers, look very simple. Do I like it? Would I live there myself if I was a tenant, etc.? Those are very important factors to consider, and that's what can make a good investment better than a not so good investment, or an average investor, and even a terrible investment. So there you go, your question answered. That pretty much concludes our vlog number 6. So any feedback, anything that you guys think we should cover over the next coming weeks, we're definitely open to feedback, and hopefully, now with these improved microphones, the quality for the podcast is going to be superior. I'm confident of that. So
the podcast now, we're also available on Apple iTunes.
That's right.
So if you don't have time, or you're riding to work, or you're in the car or whatever, then you can get us on the Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well.
Exactly.
So
links are going to be in the description. So we're going to have links to our social media. Definitely get in touch with us if we can help you sell or buy a property for investment or for self-occupancy in prime central London. Then drop us a line, phone number at the end as well. We'll be more than happy to help you, and let's have a coffee and see where we go from there. Thank you for paying attention, and see you guys next week.
Have a good week.